Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon. This is another CYSSDE webinar. Thank you for joining in. We are happy that we will be able to host our 7th webinar today, which will be basically in the line of what we within CYSSDE are currently doing, and that is we need to support the development of capacity and capabilities in Europe in terms of cybersecurity developments in relation to the current developments, for instance, in policymaking, and also the strategy for Europe to become more cyber resilient in the digital developments. So my name is Ulrich Seldensacht. I'm the managing director of an association called ELSEC. I'm basically broadcasting here from out of Belgium, and I'll be your host for today. CYSSDE is basically in a collaboration that we are having together with a number of partners, and which is an European activity, also supported financially by the European Commission, that is there really to facilitate the deployment for preparedness and support. And what that really means is that we are trying to facilitate some insights, experiences, best practices, knowledge on how to create this additional capacity. So our main focus is in relation to the open call that we are organizing. It's basically a funding mechanism that we are offering for up to 200,000 euros to organizations that participate in our program. So you can find all the details, as you probably know by now, through the CYSSDE website. The closing date is next week, so you'll probably have to hurry up a bit with your applications. But we do see that there's still quite a lot of activity happening, so you're very welcome to join in. If you haven't started, then there's still time to do this. We have seen people doing this within a week. So if you know what it is that you're dealing with, and in most cases you are, this is definitely a no-brainer for you. So in this open call, we actually finance 200,000 euros or up to projects and organizations, in this case, that are submitting us their application for this, whereby they indicate how they will be spending, in this case, up to more than 400,000 euros if they want to receive 200,000 euros. In the domain of developing, organizing pen tests and vulnerability assessments for organizations, typically in the domain of critical infrastructure and or that have to be NIS2 compliant as an essential or an important operator. But other types of entities are definitely also welcome. For instance, those companies which are preparing themselves, for instance, for the CRA and are doing the vulnerability assessments of products with digital elements. But also typically, if you're working towards critical infrastructure protection or in other domains, you're definitely also very welcome to participate in this open call. The selection process will start as of next week and will take about 1.5 to 2 months for us to complete, and we'll then be able to give some insights on the results. And in essence, those results will have to lead to US organizations that have to be doing some activities. Those activities will have to include vulnerability assessments and pen tests, which is also one of the main topics of today's session. So beyond the financial means, we will also be able to guide you some in the execution of the activities. There will be somebody or even a couple of our team members that will help you in the day-to-day operations in terms of the mentoring. So we'll be closely following up and giving you some advice on how to potentially activate your activities or improve. But we're also, of course, watching out for a high quality of your reportings and doing, of course, the pen tests and bringing those results back into the market wherever that is possible. So today's topic is, again, also very much in the same lines. So as you know, that we are in a collaboration of different partners from throughout Europe. So we have some technical partners and we have some partners which are more related to official instances, like the speaker of today's session, Ángel González from INCIBE. And next to that, there's also our partners from the Romanian cybersecurity strategy coordination entity, DNSC, which will be also guiding some of the results of the activities of CISSDE and also the pentest results into the domain of risk sharing and making also sure that some of the results can be used to their optimal means. So earlier on, we actually already talked a little bit about the activities that we are also currently hosting in relation to the CRA. So just as an insight, pen tests and vulnerability assessments don't only have to be done inside of networks or inside of a specific appliance. They can also be done for the purpose of, for instance, in this case, the CRA. We have another activity which is called Crazy that we are organizing in this context. And so as Crazy, we will be facilitating some CRA compliance tools that can be used for this. But in the meantime, the pen test and the vulnerability assessments that we are offering under the CISSDE project and program, you can of course also apply for the CRA. Earlier on, we have been doing a number of webinars. Most of them you can actually also see online on the CISSDE website and the CISSDE channels. So the second webinar that we had been organizing was in relation to hacking the world being easy, and where Robbe from Torion, one of the other partners, shared some of his experiences on actually doing pen tests and vulnerability assessments, and some of those resulting in some useful insights that can and should also be shared with the rest of the world. So most of those results, in this case, would then be shared in the form of what's called a CVE. And those CVEs is definitely also one of the main topics that we will be talking about today. So the end result basically of the webinar that we had together with Robbe ended up in presenting basically how can we further improve the mechanism of the CVEs on the reporting and on how to share basically vulnerabilities that have been discovered by ethical hackers or by organizations, and how to best make sure that they can get widely known without, of course, being the deficit of these vulnerabilities, basically having a malicious user abusing those vulnerabilities for, let's say, the lesser interest. So in our case, we, of course, would like to share the fact that CVEs or vulnerabilities have been found, and then basically being able to share them with companies which are securing your assets or the assets of your customers. In the last session that we did, which was 2 weeks ago, we did something specifically on the device security testing. And so there we had Joost from Resilium, who showcased a bit some of the challenges in relation to device security. So products with digital elements, if you like. So both combined really are the good basis of the discussion that we'll be having today with Ángel. So good morning again, Ángel, and thank you for joining. Welcome also in this CISSDE webinar. As you know, INCIBE is also a partner to the CISSDE activities, and it was for us very much a very interesting domain to see that you will be able to share some of your ideas and backgrounds as a CNA in this world and in this domain. So maybe before I basically let you take over here the screen, maybe explain a little bit on what you do within INCIBE and what it is specifically that INCIBE is doing in this particular domain.
Thank you, Olgit. INCIBE is a national company from Spain, a part of the public administration, and we have a number of roles there. We do many different things. Particularly, I'm from INCIBE CERT. Well, a bit of disclaimer here. This presentation was prepared for last Monday, so what I'm explaining is already perhaps slightly outdated, but I hope people won't mind about it. And one of the things that INCIBE does, I'm going to explain roughly about INCIBE, but one of the things we do is being a CNA, a CVE Numbering Authority, and that's the piece that we thought was most interesting for you in this context of vulnerability disclosure.
Okay, top. Take us for a ride.
Okay. So I think everyone is seeing the presentation right now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So as I was saying, let me see. So it was, shows. Okay. So as I was telling you, INCIBE CSiRT is the Reference Security Incident Response Center, CSiRT, in Spain, which is designated for citizens, private law entities, and digital service providers, operators of essential services, and critical operators under the terms of the Royal Decree Law 12/2018 of 7 September, which is transposing the NIS1 directive. Here in Spain, INCIBE CSiRT is operated by INCIBE, and we are under the Ministry for the Transformation and Civil Service through the Secretary of State of Telecommunication and Digital Infrastructures. And well, in the case of incidents affecting digital critical private sector operators, INCIBE CSiRT is jointly operated by INCIBE and the Cybersecurity Coordination Office of the Ministry of Interior. As one of the reference incident response teams, we coordinate with the rest of the national and international teams to improve the efficiency in the fight against crimes involving networks and information systems in order to reduce their effect on public security. In Spain, the regulation involves the National Customer Notification and Management Guide, Royal Decree 43/2021, which develops the NIS1 directive. There are several agreements between different state secretaries. There is a national security framework, the security framework for 5G, and of course, there is the NIS2 directive, which affects the whole Europe. Moreover, there are additional laws and regulations in Europe for achieving and improve security. The CSA, the Cyber Resilience Act, Digital Services Act, Cybersecurity Act, and indeed we have a very packed legislative timeline in front of us. So, what's the purpose of INCIBE CSiRT as a Cybersecurity Incident Response Center? First of all, our main mission involves services for incident response, prevention, and early warning. We perform incident monitoring on a national scale. We disseminate early warnings, we coordinate incident response, situational awareness, dynamically analyze risks and incidents, collaborate with other incident response teams, like most national teams. We are the reference CSiRT for citizens and private law companies, digital service providers, entities of strategic interest, those affiliated to the Spanish research network, that is the DIRIS, operators of critical and essential services, and well, it's also worth noting the collaboration with law enforcement and the public prosecutor in cybersecurity cases that require such coordination between different entities. If we look at the services provided by INCIBE CSiRT, we generally describe them as some reactive services and some proactive services. The main service provided, like any other CSiRT, is Incident Response 1, but we also provide computer crisis support, available for critical or very high impact incidents, and national crisis management. When handling incidents, CVE receives events through multiple input channels, such as our online reporting form for cybersecurity incidents, or simply by email, in addition to the proactive detection that is performed through our intelligence model. The customer would explain the security problem or incident they are experiencing in as much detail as possible, and if they wish, they could also include attachments when sending the email that could help explain the problem or facilitate analysis. In the case that not all the necessary information was provided in the initial notification, CVE would request further details. The event is registered in our ticketing tool, where the experts of our external service for cybersecurity event analysis and processing, in charge of this service, would check the tool on an ongoing basis so that an efficient and early management of the events received can be carried out. In a first phase, the reported event is analyzed, and this would consist of determining the scope of action and recording the event in the tool as a new incident when applicable. If an event was received which after analysis is found to be outside INCIBE's scope, INCIBE would redirect the report and forward it to the competent body and/or inform the sender that INCIBE is not the appropriate recipient, specifying the correct one if possible. However, occasionally, in response to a specific request and as part of collaborative action between CSiRT, often ends the overall cyberspace security, certain incidents that could be considered outside the action's scope are also addressed. One, it has been established that the event received corresponds to a cybersecurity incident within INCIBE's scope. It will be classified according to the reference taxonomy for security incidents that we are using, which is the same that is used by CSiRT teams all around the world. The hazard level assigned for the incident is initially determined by the classification of the incident according to the criteria for determining the level of risk that a cyber incident established in our management guide states, although once analyzed by the operator handling the incident, this can be adjusted. Finally, the incident response is prioritized based on the incident severity and other factors. Incident handling is carried out by an expert from the different levels, the one handling event analysis, in the case of minor security events that are defined in the operational procedures. Otherwise, they are escalated to external service technicians for cybersecurity incident analysis and handling, which are a second level, or incident handling technician, which are a third level. All of these according to our internal procedures and operational criteria defined in our escalation matrix. One of the initial steps is to verify whether the event has already been handled or is currently being handled, or if it is related to an existing incident in some other way that we already have in our ticketing tool. In such cases, it is not considered a new incident, provided it's additional information related to an existing one. Therefore, it should be associated with the pre-existing case. In the case it is escalated to that second level experts, the incident will be handled according to the operational procedures or their own experience, knowledge and know-how, and their own expertise if it does not. INCIBE's incident handling experts at that level we mentioned before take over incidents that are escalated to them by the first or second level technicians and collaborate in all areas of action, but pay special attention to incidents involving critical and strategic operators, entities of special interest, and digital service providers, as well as those incidents with special relevance. Although they are mainly operating in office hours, there would also be people from INCIBE on duty 24/7 for incidents affecting critical operators. It is important to note that INCIBE serves exclusively as a coordinator in handling cybersecurity incidents. Therefore, it cannot guarantee, although we would like to, that users will be completely satisfied with the incident resolution, or that the incident will be solved in a satisfactory way. However, when communicating with the affected person who has been notified or who has referred as an incident, the JAS offers the opportunity to complete a satisfaction survey for our incident response service. And if appropriate, the actions may be proposed to improve the service. In the next slide, we show an overall view of this service in 2024. Overall incidents increased 16% up to 97,000, even if we exclude the incidents that are linked to vulnerable systems, which are also incidents, but some people consider them as a second-class citizen when considering them incidents. These incidents that are suffered by our constituency are mainly related to malware and fraud. Our collaboration with collaboration with the Spanish security forces and the public prosecutor's office involves different types of requests. Sometimes it's research support in certain cases. It may involve coordinating in incidents involving criminal cases, and it could be just exchange of technical information related to certain threats or incidents. However, as we all know, cyber incidents and threats are not confined to a country, not even to Europe. They are an issue. They are a menace of a global scope. INCIBE also has a broad network of relations and alliances that allows a proper coordination of multiple security teams with cybersecurity competencies at a national, European, and international level. INCIBE itself belongs to many cybersecurity networks, from the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, FIRST, CSiRT Network, Trusted Introducers, Anti-Phishing Working Group, national groups. The happening of critical cybersecurity incidents also now focusing more on a national level again, based on the type, magnitude, and impact of the constituency of INCIBE could lead to a crisis situation. So INCIBE also has some resources preparing for such a crisis. We should note that the moments immediately following the detection of a potential crisis are particularly crucial. A proper management of the initial phases of a crisis may allow avoiding or significantly reducing the impact. The main problem lies in that in many cases, crises are not detected until later stages, when published by the media, social networks, or even by the malicious actor. As such, one of the main challenges for us is being able to perform an early detection of events that might lead to a crisis, so it is possible to control the situation as soon as possible. Finishing our tour of these services, although not focused on handling incidents, I don't want to skip that INCIBE also provides a cybersecurity helpline. This is a free, confidential and national service offered by INCIBE to help build digital trust and raise cybersecurity awareness and resilience in Spanish citizens. This is available every day of the year by phone. We have a source code phone number 017 by WhatsApp, Telegram, and email. Its aim is to provide easily accessible answers to all those doubts and questions that may arise about cybersecurity, privacy, personal data, and how to use the internet safely and responsibly. This helpline offers advice and assistance to minors and their role models, that is, parents, teachers, and professionals who work with them, citizens in general, and also companies that use the internet and technology in performing their activity and who should protect their assets and their business, which pretty much is every company nowadays. The answers offered are given by teams with multidisciplinary profiles, which allows queries to be addressed from a technical, legal, and psychosocial point of view. These teams are organized into levels. The first level deals with incoming queries in the first instance. They advise on prevention and response to a knowledge base, which is made of a large number of operating procedures and worksheets to follow, and queries of greater complexities are escalated to a level with greater specialization, which is served by IT security experts. Now, let's go back and take a look at the other kind of services provided by INCIBE, the proactive ones. Proactive services are those that are provided in a preventive way before an incident surfaces, or before we are aware that there was an incident. INCIBE also offers a wide range of proactive services. Among them, we may mention asset management, cybersecurity reports, our direct reports, which are some reports of exposure, digital monitoring, ICARO, which is used for IOC sharing, early warning, CNA and vulnerability management, our anti-botnet service, knowledge and awareness, among so many services. Here I'm going just to focus exclusively in those more related to the current topic of this talk. First of all, asset management for the entities is perhaps the main proactive service we offer, as it is the basis upon which other services are built. The first phase, often overlooked, of every incident response lifecycle is the preparation one. Now, this can involve many things, this can take many forms, and indeed there is so much that can be done there. But one of the very basic steps for any company that wants to prepare itself to defend from suffering a cybersecurity incident is the knowledge of what they are tasked to defend. At INCIBE, when we sign an agreement with a Spanish company, one of the main points we request to be briefed about is what the assets are. We need to know which assets, IP addresses, domains belong to them, in order to be able to warn them should we detect an incident affecting those, as well as the proper technical contacts that should be alerted and so on. Currently, we have over 300 entities, more than 1,000 contacts, about 215,000 assets, and that includes over 98 million different IP addresses. These are then correlated on INCIBE's intelligence model, which is used for incident response, for preparing our direct reports, and so on. On digital monitoring, INCIBE performs a continuous monitoring of open sources, the source codes, face web, deep web, dark web, and we focus on proactively detecting interesting events, data leaks, cyber attacks, compromised systems, new campaigns. Those are reinforced also during special times, such as during election campaigns or relevant events of international significance held in Spain. When spreading knowledge and strengthening the cybersecurity culture, INCIBE provides multiple channels, which are specialized on the different publics and their needs. In particular, audiences of a technical profile are served on our INCIBE portal, which is aimed to cybersecurity professionals. There stand out the early warning and security alerts, which include both advisories of products and services of the information technologies, oriented to users with advanced technical knowledge, such as system administrators, in need of operative information that facilitates the prevention of and protection against security incidents and threats, and the ACS warnings, whose focus are the products and services of operational technologies and industrial control systems to inform those responsible for these systems of the existence of a vulnerability or threat affecting the cybersecurity of the system. You can view here an overview of the types of contents that are published over the course of 1 year. This is a snapshot a few years back, and we see the many different type of contents that we publish. Centering now on the process of coordinated the disclosure of vulnerabilities, which is more focused on, they are more interesting to the audience today. Here on this topic, INCIBE is a major player. First of all, the first step of a vulnerability assessment is being able to properly identify the individual vulnerability. As you are all surely aware, some vulnerabilities have been given very well-known names, such as Heartbleed, CellShock, Spectre, Bluekey, but most vulnerabilities have just a CVE identifier. There were over 37,000 different vulnerabilities only in 2024. We are already we already have 5,000 or 10,000 on 2025. There is a continuous growing in the number of vulnerabilities discovered and documented, and it is expected that the trend will continue in that way the following years. Properly identifying a vulnerability allows multiple people to unambiguously refer to one vulnerability and also assess whether that's relevant or not to a specific environment or for pen testing companies to a specific client. A vulnerability will affect a given set of products and versions. Sometimes they will also only affect the certain architectures. They may have mitigating conditions. Also, naming just treating each vulnerability separately allows appropriately scoring the severity of that vulnerability, which is also immensely useful for an adequate prioritization of efforts. So, the CVE program is an international community-driven effort to identify and catalog publicly disclosed vulnerabilities. The initial CVE list began back in 1999 and provides unique identifiers for vulnerabilities on all kinds of products. It has the official sponsoring of CISA, and it currently documents over 270,000 vulnerability entries. When we prepared this, as I was telling you, up to this point, I was telling about the status as of 24th of March. When I prepared this presentation, it was 271,349 vulnerabilities. And this morning, when I checked it up, there was 272,396 CVE records, which means in 1 week we have 1,000 more vulnerabilities being published, which is really, really huge. In order to achieve this, well, this is a distributed effort. There are 446 CVE numbering authorities, and INCIBE is one of those. There are, well, several roles in the CVE program. Those there are the numbering authorities, which are the CNAs. There are numbering authorities of last resort. There are root CNAs. And if we look at the NIS2 directive on its final test, that directive also acknowledges the relevance of coordinated vulnerability disclosure, specifying that each member state shall designate a CSiRT as vulnerability coordinator, acting as a trusted intermediary, which facilitates where necessary the interaction between the person reporting a vulnerability and the manufacturer or provider of the vulnerable products or services. And the task of the CSiRT designated as coordinator shall include identifying the concerned entities, assisting the people reporting the vulnerability, and negotiating the disclosure timelines and managing the vulnerabilities that affect multiple entities. At INCIBE, we also maintain a translation into Spanish of this database of vulnerabilities. We have been translating in since 2006 in order to facilitate its usage for our public. And well, if you have Spanish-speaking clients, you are more than welcome to link to us and use it when referencing CVEs. INCIBE has been part of the CVE program, that is, we have been assigning CVE numbers since 2020. We are a CNA. We assign identifiers to vulnerabilities under our scope, and since 2021, we are a root CNA. That is, we act as an umbrella with other CNAs under us. Currently, there are 6 CNAs under the CNA of INCIBE, and we are one of the only 7 root CNAs present currently in the CVE program. We were even the first root in Europe. Of course, we collaborate with other CISs and entities and supporting their efforts and helping them with coordinated disclosure as necessary. As to our own numbers, INCIBE coordinated 465 vulnerabilities last year into 2024. And our goal is to improve the level of cybersecurity of Spanish companies by coordinating the disclosure and patching of the vulnerabilities, helping them to develop CVD policies, and also assisting them in setting up a CNA when they are interested in doing so. We also promote cybersecurity talent at a national level, encouraging vulnerability reporting. We provide a safe harbor to those finding vulnerabilities when reporting them to the vendors, and also giving them visibility and to promote them. A typical CVD coordination process would involve the phases shown in the screen. As a CNA, we would be contacted by a reporter, sometimes a researcher, sometimes a company that found a vulnerability on one of their own products, sometimes they are users of a product, sometimes a cybersecurity company that is doing a pen test. And the case is that whoever that was found it, he found a vulnerability in a product, which is part of the product itself. It turned out to be a new vulnerability which was not previously known, and it is reported through us so that it can be added to the catalog as well as reported to the vendor and fixed. The first step would be the triage of the vulnerability report. First of all, determining if that's indeed a vulnerability. It could be a feature of the product being misinterpreted by the person contacting us. It might be a misconfiguration issue in that particular machine they are looking at. I shall also remark here that when we are talking about vulnerabilities in this context, we are talking about vulnerabilities in products, not on a particular system. This machine of Joe running Windows is vulnerable, is quite different to this vulnerability in Microsoft Windows, which would affect everyone running that OS. The next step would be that we need to ensure that the vulnerability is a new one, since it could be a vulnerability, but it could be that it is already listed in those large list of vulnerabilities. We would need to ensure that we are the competent CNA, since there may be another CNA more suited for handling this vulnerability. For instance, in the cases where the vendor of the product is a CNA, they are often the competent CNA for assigning the CVE for the product, in which case we would direct the case to them. And of course, a single report may involve one or more CVE, depending on the number of independent vulnerabilities that were found. A single pen testing report may find multiple vulnerabilities. And as the last step, we assign a CVE or multiple CVEs, depending on the number of vulnerabilities, and agree with the vendor a release date on which we will be publishing the information, which is often the date when the vendor publishes the updated version of the software or the product with the fix. In some cases, what we receive is not a vulnerability per se, but some kind of incident on one system, in which case it is handled through the incident response service that we mentioned previously, and notify in order to notify the responsible party for that system. CVE assignment follows a number of agreed upon rules in order for all 400 CNAs to work independently yet in a coherent way. The basic building stone is that one CVE represents one independently fixable vulnerability. If there are several defects which depend between themselves, that would count as a single CVE. Whereas if there are multiple defects that could be fixed independently, that would require one CVE for each. There are also cases where a vulnerability may affect multiple products. If they are using the same code, that's a single CVE. For example, programs using a vulnerable library, that would be one CVE. It's one CVE in the library, not even if the program requires separate updates, that's still one CVE. But if they are using different code, even if they suffer similar problems, they would be multiple CVEs. There is some tricky cases, such as websites with a vulnerability. Since a website is not a product, the vulnerabilities would not deserve a CVE. CVE are for products that are publicly distributed. Thus, you won't see a CVE for a vulnerability on Facebook.com, since that's a website on meta servers. As soon as they fix it, it's fixed for all the users. Whereas if you found a vulnerability on WordPress, the software named WordPress, that would affect everyone which has a WordPress blog installed, and that would receive a CVE. And also cross-site scripting with multiple arguments count as a single CVE. Another point here would be in the cases where there is a vulnerability on not really the product, but a vulnerability on the protocol itself. An example would be when someone analyzes a protocol and turns out that the vulnerability is in the protocol and not in the different products implementing it. If you implement it properly, you are bound to implement such a vulnerability. In that case, it would be considered a vulnerability in the protocol and would get one CVE instead of one CVE on each of the products implementing the protocol. Still, in some cases, when there are doubts when considering if several vulnerabilities are independent or not, it's generally considered one vulnerability. But in cases when there are multiple products, it's considered multiple CVEs. When CVEs, as we said, have an identifier, but also have a number of fields that should be fixed in order to properly document it. There is there are multiple ways to do that, but there is a tool which is called Vulnogram. It's public. It's even a website that you can view in github.io. And this is the same tool that can be used by the CNAs to submit these vulnerabilities to the central database. Since that's public, you may test that if you want to explore the different ways CVEs are documented and the different fields or the different ways to score vulnerabilities. And finally, how to coordinate a vulnerability with INCIBE. If you find a vulnerability in a product, it may be a product you own, a product you sell, it may be a vulnerability you find in one product you are doing a pen test for a client. If you first discover it, it was not previously known, and you can report it to us so that it's added to the CVE catalog. I fix it, you get some nice credit for that. That's also easier to include in your reports, saying it has a CVE number. And well, here is how you can report it to us. Our scope involves vulnerability coordination for industrial control systems, informational technologies, Internet of Things, at a national level, and reported to us by Spanish organization and researchers that are not in another CNA scope. So that is quite ample. You can report it to us. We are reachable through this email address, cvcoordination@incibe.es. We also have a PGP keys in case you want to encrypt your message. We receive vulnerabilities in Spanish, but also in English. There's no problem there. And we also have a Hall of Fame of people reporting vulnerabilities to us, so that is also a bit of marketing for you when contacting us. You have there also the URL you can use where you have all the information available. And that's a quick primer on what we do, what is INCIBE, what is a CNA, and I open the need for people to ask their doubts or questions they may have.
Thank you very much, Ángel. It was a very enlightening and interesting presentation to get a little bit on the of the insights on how you're dealing with incidents and how it fits within the wider range of activities that INCIBE has, and definitely also interesting to see how you deal with them. So I think you mentioned at some point in time the number of annual CVEs, or at least incidents that you're receiving, which are being produced as CVEs. So how do you actually decide? I mean, you gave some indication, impressions as well, of course. But how do you take the whole process of deciding if a CVE is to be published as a CVE? Because with the current database of more than 300,000, it requires a bit of work to do the full assessment, I guess, to see how much of it is actually has already been published or is new or whatever. So how does that process really work?
Well, it's generally based on the fact that the database is organized by vendors and products. So if we get a vulnerability in a certain product, when looking at that, it's well, you can generally see if there's a candidate CV for that or not. In this case, this topic, it's worth noting that the descriptions, it is expected that a description is good enough. So saying a description, there was a vulnerability, that doesn't help understanding what the vulnerability is. In the case of some vendors, you sometimes see a description saying, this is a bad pointer issue. This is not the same as this another CVE. That's quite poor. It may work in the case when the vendor is when the CNA is the vendor of the product, because they probably know what they are doing, but it's not too helpful for the general public. In some other cases, you can see a really detailed description, such as if you look at a CVE for the Linux kernel, you can see not the function involved, and also sometimes even a backtrace, which is seen, or the logs that are shown when this bug is triggered. So that's the opposite side. That is very detailed. Usually, you see a general description, or sometimes it mentions a parameter which is involved when if you provide bad input on this parameter, or this function mishandles a buffer size, but each case usually requires its own analysis. It also, there is a lot of variation between different reports. Sometimes the researcher has done pretty much everything, has a very detailed information on what it is reporting. Sometimes it could be more vague about. It seems there is something here. There's also a lot of communication with the vendors, which may say, no, this is the same CVE we fixed last week, or it could be, yes, this is something new that could. This is a process we. Each case, there are some general tools, but I don't know how to explain that each case is its own one.
Yurik, you're muted, sorry.
I was putting myself on mute because I had some background noise. Thank you so much, Vinicius, for seeing that. So that's good why we have a double backup here. So thank you very much, Ángel, in this case. So I was saying that we have a couple of questions from the participants. Let me just quickly go through them. So Jesus Cubero is asking if you can share the presentation, Ángel. So he's asking for, will this presentation be shared later on?
I don't think there would be a problem with sharing that with people here. In any case, Jesus, if you are interested, just send me an email and I can share it to you. I don't know if if it could be saved in your website or teach.
Yes, of course. So you can definitely send it over to us, and then we can attach it to the recording of the webinar for sure, and we can send it over to the participants as well, of course. So that's of course something that we can do if you allow us to. So thank you for that. Then Diana Prusova is asking, how do you integrate your IR service with the client's infrastructure? So I assume that the IR in this case is about the incident response.
Yes, that's a typical way of naming incident response. Well, that question, that's a really simple answer, which is we don't integrate with the client's infrastructure. We are not part of the client infrastructure. We do provide them a portal through which they can view our incidents or provide updated details, but the basic foundation of the system is just exchanging emails. These emails, which may be encrypted with PGP, but we basically communicate through email. So that allows to communicate with pretty much everyone, since that's the very basic level, no? With communicating with people on the internet. Then the client may have their own service, which may also integrate in the ticketing system the emails received. So we have an email address for the technical level, which is usually a SOC, or it may be a group email address, it may be a ticketing system. It is recommended that it's a 24/7 monitored address. But the actual system behind that email address, it's up to the client. So our ticketing system may send an email, and that may get into the ticketing system of the client one, and the communication may just flow that way through email as text. Of course, in some cases, we may do some phone calling or some video conferences in cases when that's needed, but that's generally not the case.
Yeah, so Diana is adding to that, but there needs to be some feeding of the incidents from the client to your system.
Yes, of course, we have, the clients may send us an email, or they may also, we have, as I think I mentioned that, we also have a public form where they can fill out everything, and if they provide the details, we associate that with their company. So that's all of that is assigned to them.
Okay. So, and then for the rest, we have a question or two specifically more related to the CYSSDE open call activities, but we can answer those in a separate level. And we'll do that probably best through the help desk in this case. So we'll pick up on those, and I assume that's Elena that was asking for this very shortly afterwards. Okay, Ángel, I think this was very interesting as a presentation. I think it was also very complementary to the previous presentations we've had. And I think in this case, it's very useful also for attendees to understand how once they are participating in the program, in the CYSSDE application program, if they are being selected, then this is also the procedure that they will have to follow, of course, to start managing the CVEs and the vulnerabilities that were found. And so hopefully Ángel will be seeing each other there as well in assessing some of the vulnerabilities which have been reported. I think we'll probably be able to process those also through you in this case as well, and making sure that they are in line with the expected goals. So I don't think we have any further questions, and we've also reached the time limit. So with this, I would say thank you very much again. Are there any other comments or recommendations that you might be having for our attendees here?
Not really. We are expecting your vulnerability reports,
Yeah.
And see you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the next time will likely be when we can disclose a bit and some of the vulnerabilities that were found, and maybe doing a bit of more in-depth analysis on some of the ones which were discovered over the last period, and definitely then the ones which had been discovered in the CSSDE project activities. So let me quickly check if there's any additional questions popping up. And I don't think there are. So, all right, with this, I'd say thank you very much to you, Ángel, for sharing this intelligence, and to the team within INCIBE for the opportunity to have you here. Thank you also to the CSSDE team to facilitate this, and for to all of the participants for joining in. And so don't forget the deadline for the CSSDE Open Call 2 is next week, April 7th at 5 p.m. So do make sure that you finish up your application. I would recommend to do that still this week. At least send it in a final version. You can still update it until, let's say, the very last moment of the deadline. But do ensure that it's there. So at least it will be a bit less of stress to make sure that all of the last details will be in. And we wish you, of course, all of you that will be participating to this, good luck. And once you have been selected, we wish you good hunting, and definitely also interesting results that we'll be able to share, in this case, with Ángel and with his team, and then reporting them back into this in these activities. For the rest, wishing you a very good continuation of the day and week, and looking forward to seeing you in a next webinar, which will be likely in about 2 weeks' time from here. So we will continue with the webinars, but of course the Open Call 2 will be closed as of next week, April 7th. Thank you again for participating, and see you shortly. Bye.